hopefully you've read the book that we're going to talk about, but I'm not going to go into too much about Karl's story in terms of, you know what he did, and you know how he earned his fortune, and you know about, as the book says, the triumphs and tragedies of his life. He had the sort of, as he says, the golden touch in business, but could not necessarily have that same golden touch in his personal life, and had struggled with two sons who had drug addiction. Lost one to a drug overdose, his oldest son Mark, and Chris, who I got to know quite well, battled drug addiction for much of his life and ultimately died of cancer. Again, fast forward, Karl sold his company, and I don't know, he could tell you the exact date, but around 2000. He built one of, if not the largest, plumbing supply companies on the West Coast. I forgot 9 locations, I believe, initially, and he sold it to a company who then turned around and sold it to Home Depot, and and then rather than go off and buy a big yacht and travel the world, Karl decided to give his money away, and to give it away to people in need, and people in need of substance abuse treatment. The interesting part of the story goes, after he sold it, he then, years later, Home Depot didn't do so well, and whatever they did, I don't know the insides, it's not important, the business end of it, but Karl and some partners took the business over again, or began, I didn't take it over, they reopened Todd Pipe, which is thriving again today. That is a multi-hundred million dollar plus business. But here's the kicker. Karl has 4 partners, and so he owns 20% of the business. He gives away all his profits. So if you're remodeling your home, make sure your plumber uses Todd Pipe. Because I'm serious, some poor person in need will benefit by you doing that, okay? And so we have a foundation. Karl has a foundation. He's given away $20 million to date. Karl's motto: work hard, make a lot of money, and give it away. So I met Karl about 15 years ago. As Linda said, I started the Torrance Memorial Hospital program, and then it was a small little, excellent program, but substance abuse and chemical dependency, certainly more so back then, a little still, it is not big priorities in major hospitals. So we had a little program going, and anyway, I remember the head of our healthcare foundation said, "Can you use $5.5 million for your program?" I thought it was April Fool's or something, And so anyway, long-winded, Karl was going to donate money, and then he did due diligence, and he had choice to donate it to really any place at that time. And after looking into places, a combination of the community that he spent many years living in, as well as hopefully the quality of the program, led him to Torrance Memorial Hospital, and the Karl McMillen Center was started about 2002. We're in our 14th year. Basically, he's touched a lot of people, and I'm glad for opportunities like this because he'd never say anything about himself. So this is an opportunity where people who don't know get to learn that about what good he's done, and afterwards can get up and say thank you, which is what he deserves. So that's my introduction for Karl.
We moved to Manhattan Beach in 1968. We were living in Rolling Hills. We'd built a house, and since my wife we would hook up the trailer, and she'd get all the surfboards together and all the kids in the neighborhood. She'd be driving down to the beach every day, or quite often. So with that, then I started looking on the Strand, and so we bought a house at 2109 Strand, the north corner. The north corner is the sunshine corner. That's where you want to be, and you get the walking path, so you have additional parking and things. Anyway, the business is going good. We're busy. My wife was volunteering at the hospital and different things, and it just seemed like the drugs moved in 1968. I don't think anyone was aware of what was going on. We weren't aware, and then as we learned, one of our son's teachers we became good friends with, he was on top of it, and we went from there, and then we started seeing things missing from the house. One time we drove home, and here comes a television. So we put bars on the windows to keep the stuff in the house, not to keep people out. It just crept up on us. And then each time prison and this and that again and again and again, and then new plans, and I thought I could get on top of it, but it didn't work out that way. One time I was very good friends with the founder of National Med Enterprise. It was like number 2 in the nation for hospitals. They had hospitals in Spain and France and so forth. And he had a lockdown facility, I told you this earlier, in New Jersey, and I was trying to get my son out of the prison in Susanville. We went from prisons from Mexico to the Oregon border, Susanville, get him out of there and get him in this lockdown facility. We were lucky one time where we got the second strike removed so that the third strike would become the second strike. That had never happened before. On that one, he was coming down Crenshaw Boulevard riding his bicycle with no shirt on and all the tattoos showing, and they found $8 worth of crack cocaine or something, and that filed the third strike. First, we moved into Mexico, and I knew a man that had a hotel down there, so I would advance money to him to see that he could, he was staying on the beach with a camper, but on and on and on. Every time you think that, well, this will work, and something would happen. What I really missed was that if he could have cleaned up, he could have been a great sponsor because he could really tell the stories. And that would have been great.
Yeah.
Seemed like my 2 boys were leaders.
Gotcha.
And, well, they were good looking. The girls liked him. The other surfers liked him because they were top surfers. Well, they had a following. But I would have used any advice I could get. But the question is, are we on top of it now? Is it decreasing? I don't know. In the meantime, we're helping a lot of drug programs. We like places like the Beacon House, People Off the Street, First Step, House of Hope, Friendly House.
Lynn House.
The
Villa
Villa
I
is here.
mean.
Yeah.
I don't know if this addresses that either, but I think again from the professional side, working with people, I think the hardest part is what do you do as a parent? In other words, I can tell people what to do, not really, but I'm not sure I would do those things. It's that balance between tough love and really wanting to take every chance, do anything, everything, and keep trying to, turn this tide around. And so you might have somebody saying, slam the door, let him sleep on the street, whatever. And then your heart's saying, no, one more chance at rehab or something. And there's no answer. I mean, it's a terrible dilemma to be in that role. I mean, the whole thing's terrible, but to be in that parental role is a terrible dilemma. What do you do with somebody who doesn't want help? What do you do with somebody who says, it could be somebody specific in your family, or even a neighbor or a friend, or in other words, somebody who's impacting you. Obviously, if it's in your family, it's a lot more impact. But what do you do if somebody says no, or leave me alone, or get away, or I don't want anything to do with it, regardless of whether you have no resources or you have every resource in the world to offer? Yes.
Well, what we do is we give the best information that we know, or that we have, and you just never know when a person is going to want help, and everybody has moments of clarity, and parents can just have a brochure laying around, or just some type of information, and they might not want it while the parent is trying to talk to them, but in their own time, you just have some basic information. You never know where that's going to lead, or where meetings are, or just just some type of information. Any information is better than no information.
We'll sometimes talk to somebody and we'll see them 5 years later.
Right.
And, you know, they weren't ready 5 years before, but we'll see them as a teenager. We have a teenage program, and they don't want anything to do with it or just mess around with it, and then we'll see them 5 or 10 years later as an adult. And they're a little more either ready or somebody's made them ready, like the courts or something. There, as she said, there's lots of places to get resources, you know, and get information. You know, what we can do is lay it out in front of people. Can't make them take it. But it's painful when you're somebody you care about is not taking it.
I have a question. Carl, was there anything specific that you and your wife were able to do to get through the grieving process? Or is that a lifetime process? Or was there something that you two were able to do?
Keep busy, helping other people. Move on.
Merle?
My name's Merle. I just thought about your question because we had this happen in our household. And my wife and my first reaction was to bury it under the rug. Didn't want to look bad to the community. Wanted to keep the kids in the school where they were, and just try to hopefully think that if I put my head deep enough into the sand, that it would disappear. And guess what? It didn't. It festered, and we did them did the two boys a tremendous disservice by doing that. Yeah.
Again, it's
Merle is the president of our board.
it's such a difficult, like I say, as a private parent, you know, as a parent, but you just don't know what to do. You know, I mean, literally every day I work with parents who have that dilemma. I mean, some major, you know, because some son's going or daughter's going off really deep in, but sometimes it's, you know, like at the beginning, every problem starts somewhere, so it's not always end of the road. And you know, like I just had a parent today. Things are going okay for 2 weeks. I really don't want to say something to him because I might disturb him, you know, and he might go back to the way he was. So the fact that I know he was drinking yesterday, I'm not going to bring it up. You know, it's like, what do you know, sitting on objectively on the other side, it's easy to say, but he doesn't want to bring it up. He doesn't want to fight with his son again, like he did 3 weeks ago.
My name's Colleen, and I'm a counselor, a drug and alcohol counselor, and I'm also an interventionist. And I want to say, on a personal note, thank you to Dr. Gelbart for trusting in me 14 years ago and bringing me on board with Karl McMillen and being able to work with the teens and families. It was an honor to be able to do that. And when one of my 4 sons got into an issue with his own marijuana use, I was able to take him straight away to Thelma for a free assessment and walk in the door and say, you know, I'll turn in my job for his life. And all parents in our community can do that for free, for that assessment to figure out if that's where they need to be, which is an honor to have that. I also want to say, as an interventionist, I had a family recently that I intervened on here in the South Bay, and their son was willing. He's in his 20s, and he was willing to go to treatment, and he's in treatment now. And I took your book with me, and I gave it to the parents. And I just got this text, and I wanted to share it with you because it's so powerful about your book. The parents are saying, I brought the book with us on vacation, Triumphs and Tragedies, with me to read. I can't put it down. I'm relating so much, I feel like I'm reading our own story. I am a little over halfway through. I want to read it before family program next week. So I think that your message carries on for so many people, and it is that pay it forward. And so many of us have been touched by your story, and we are grateful in our community for it. And I love being able today to do fundraising for House of Hope, which has also been there for 60 years because of your involvement. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for changing and healing our family and giving me this wonderful career.
Thank you.
I'll ask another question that was put out here. Sometimes, you know, by the way, I've been doing this, like I said, a long time. and this is different because you guys came here, but trying to talk about drugs and alcohol, especially with teenagers, is really not. It's not hard to do, but it's hard to get people to want to come and do and listen. I've been, like I say, at Torrance Memorial Hospital for 30 plus years more, and give tons of lectures and about lots of topics. But let's talk about drugs and alcohol in teenagers, and you'd be guaranteed to have very hardly anybody show up. Either people sit there and go, I'm not going out and seeing anybody going to see me at that conference, or they say, I don't have that problem, I don't want to go, or whatever. So we started now we give a talk, how to raise your SAT scores and get into college. And then the lines are around the block. And then we tell them, don't use drugs and alcohol and your kids will get better SAT scores. Not really, but the question is, does the story ring true today? Are there ways in which the story looks different in today's youth? Are we seeing a rise in heroin addiction in South Bay? Reading Karl's book and his boys, as he mentioned, in the late 60s it was a different time.
Yes.
I grew up in the late 60s. I grew up actually before the late 60s, unfortunately. But, it was a time of lots of drug experimentation and hallucinogenics and marijuana and then even later cocaine started filtering in here in the South Bay and Southern California. But so is it different today? Yes, in many ways. Okay, kids have access to things you can't even dream of. Okay, through the internet and social media, and the things they share with each other you can't even dream of is going on. It's frightening, really. And so there is, the stigma is not quite, in some ways, is not quite as bad as it was. If somebody was using heroin in the late 60s, it was like, get away, we can smoke pot all day, but get away from me with that. But now it's suddenly a popular drug here. It's a very popular drug in the South Bay. Kids get started, sometimes innocently, on pain medication for an accident, a sports injury or something, or an accident. And it's much cheaper than to keep trying to get their oxys, either from the internet or from some doctors. So they are introduced to heroin as a much cheaper alternative for. They no longer have the pain anymore, but now they have the desire to get pain medicine. So yes, things are a lot different. Things are really unfortunately has not improved on some level.
What's the trend?
It's scary, it's scary with young kids.
Fear.
With kids, by the way, a lot of kids, if you go into the statistics of how many percent use alcohol, how many percent use marijuana and all that, they're huge, number one. But and some people may disagree, 90% of kids that use are not going to become addicts. Okay, they're going to kind of pass through their experimentation and they're going to come out the other side and make a change. And 10% are going to have an addiction problem. But here's the problem, even on those 90%, they're playing Russian roulette. The negative consequences of health and pregnancy and sexual disease and terrible grades and problems with the law and accidents to killing someone else or killing themselves. I can go on. That tunnel they have to pass through, that minefield, is really dangerous. Process is kids are getting into their parents' medicine cabinets and taking their pills. They're drinking a lot. They're smoking a lot of pot, and then they're beginning to just progress from there. The other great that we see in our treatment centers is I'm going to call it the insanity the kids, what they will do will be mind-numbing, in the sense of we have kids who go up in the rooftops of industrial buildings and break open the air conditioning and snort the Freon or whatever's in there to get high. They have kids. There's lots of synthetic drugs that they take that are they're almost legal in the beginning because the government is 5 steps behind the people making the drugs, and it's bath salts and spice and all kinds of very dangerous drugs. And we have some kids, they do something, they almost die, they go to the emergency room, they have the worst night of their life, and then come back and do it again.
Right.
Which is, to me, mind-blowing.
Right.
And that's partly, it's a whole different discussion, but the teenage brain is not ready for adulthood.
I'm getting an education. Jeez.
Any other questions for Carl, really? That's what this is about. Yes.
I have a question. I wanted to say thank you for writing this. I read it last week and I've talked to anybody who will listen about it since then and just sharing your story. So thank you for that. One paragraph that really stuck out for me, especially for this community, it talked about thinking that you had genuinely good kids that didn't need watching. And the attitude was to be more friends than parents and just let the kids have fun in this beautiful environment. And I feel like this was in the late 60s and here we are all these years later, and I feel like we're in a very similar situation now. So what can we do to prevent that from happening all over again with another generation?
A lot of parents blame themselves. You know, I work with a lot of parents who have lost children. They blame themselves. And, you know, I always tell a parent, you know, if your son was the CEO of some big company, would you come in here and go, I did it. It was all me. He is where he is because of me. I did it, everything. It's all my... But when something's bad, it's like it's all my fault. And the reality is, I mean, you have a big influence, but there's classmates and there's teachers and there's media and there's movies and there's books and there's a host of complex interactions, and nobody's to blame for it. But the flip side of that is, I think, just keep your eyes and ears open, and like Merle said, you know, yeah, the big struggle is not burying something when you feel fearful of confronting it, and whatever that may be. And I'm a big proponent. Could be wrong. Some people don't like it. I don't believe in in kids' personal rights. Okay, especially the minute, you know, they gain their rights on their behavior, but as soon as there's a problem, all bets are off. Facebook secrets, you know, and passwords and not going through people's drawers and doing all that stuff, I think is what I did and would do, you know. But I'm not saying it's correct. It's just, you know, I think it's just important to do anything and everything one can do. Yes, Cindy.
And so on my, as I talked to Carl, and you know too, Jeff and I lost our son in January. And when I talk to people, I tell them now that to trust their guts. And the hard part is that when you trust your gut, sometimes what you find is really uncomfortable. And that means you gotta deal with it. And I think that's what a lot of parents don't want to do, is deal with it. And when you finally admit there's a problem, you're forced to do something about it. And I think that that's a big issue for parents, is really coming to grips with that there is a real issue that you have to do something about, because it's easier not to look at it. It'll go away, it'll get better, he'll go to college, everything will work out, and you just tend not to want to really look at it and really deal with it, because you're not sure what to do, and it's scary as all get out. And it is uncomfortable. Jeff and I felt alone. We felt ostracized. We felt like we were the bad parents on the block, and everybody else was doing a great job but us. And so I think there's a lot of fear for parents to actually look at what's going on in their own home, because then they have to deal with it.
Thank you. Colleen?
Dr. Gelbart, I've heard you say this before, and I wanted to just piggyback on what you said, and that is be the parent as opposed to the friend, because you can choose to be their friend when they are young adults. But there's that research that shows us that adolescents and young adults want their parents to be their parents, even though they don't say that. And the other piece of that research is they don't want to disappoint their parents. And they have trouble admitting that, but they don't want to disappoint their parents. So if we act as if, and we are the parents, then they have a better chance of success.
Thank you. And thanks, Cindy and Jeff. Thank you for, you know, coming and sharing your story. It's got to be painful.
Yes.
I don't know if it's in the book or not, but this old prospector helped raise me. My father sent me up there when I was probably 10 or 11. Then I was back there the next year for the summer vacation. he would pick pine nuts, and that would get him some money. The mine was placer. It was, he could make a little money, and he got by. As it got colder up there for him, he decided to move down to like Searchlight, and he moved down by the river. And he was called in by Social Security to get a Social Security income, and he didn't even know it was available, you know. And so anyway, they put him on Social Security, and then he came back and they said, you know, we can increase that for you. There had been an Indian lady just ahead of him, and they wouldn't give her any extra money. And he said, if I have anything coming, give it to that lady. And that was pretty neat, you know.
Is that how you
Has
learn,
nothing to do
Carl?
with drugs.
Is that how you learned from your dad?
I think so.
Things that he did?
Yeah, he also sent me down to Indio, Mecca, to pick sweet potatoes when I was like 16. 115, and the plow goes through, it turns up the sweet potatoes, you fill the lug boxes, the farm truck comes through, you put the foot on. Pretty soon the dust and the sweat is so thick on you, it's terrible, you know.
And
But-
Carl, you made a point of that in your book, that your boys didn't go through that.
Yeah,
And I would say our
I
kids
tried to
didn't
teach them
either.
how to work.
Right,
yeah.
right. That's so important.
Problem is in Manhattan Beach, all the kids are involved in sports, surf camp, and junior lifeguards, and you know, they've got their Saturdays and Sundays are completely filled. Looking back on it, I think that one of the most important things that you can do is you got to put them to work. They got to earn a buck somehow. They got to have a job, even if it's ceremonial, because most people in Manhattan Beach don't need their kid working at Fresh Brothers Pizza. But if they don't understand what it's all about.
Yeah.
And no matter how many books they read or how intellectual they are, until they've gotten their fingernails dirty by earning a buck or two on a regular basis, showing up on time and being reliable, there's a lesson that's not learned that I think then gets substituted for an entitlement, and then the entitlement becomes, hey, I might as well kind of kick back and enjoy a little bit, and that's when they start experimenting with drugs.
I think in 1968, no one realized that the drugs were coming in.
I agree.
We didn't think so.
That's true.
To your point, I've heard some people say, you know, a lot of kids suffer from affluenza.
Yeah, affluenza. Well, I think too in your book here, it said on 275, for an addict, there's absolutely no correlating drug use with consequences. We certainly can attest to that with our son. And then you state later on 304, an addict says, I know how I can rob, steal, and cheat over there and be okay in my old life. You start to think an honest life is the tough life. And I think that really becomes true, and you pointed that out with your sons. The tough life was really tough to do it the right way.
This event that we've pulled together is a South Bay Families Connected event, trying to address really, I think, what Jeff has said about how young kids are starting, that these things are being passed down starting at age 12, and this is a prevention program, and I wanted to share it with all of you because this is a free program that my group and I created that's being implemented at the schools, and it's to provide parents with education so that they can navigate this changing landscape. I mean, it looks so different than it did for all of us growing up. And so we are trying to educate parents with a monthly e-newsletter. It's free. I hope you will all sign up for it. We have monthly education events like this one that will be taking place here at Pages. And we just signed a contract with Beach Cities Health District to partner with us. Thank you, Allie Norrie from Beach Cities Health District. So we'll be bringing in a lot of different speakers, hoping to reach the elementary school parents in particular, because it's so important to be talking early and talking often, and not maybe waiting until that crisis moment, but having this just be part of, this is how you remain healthy, kids. This is, this is what you need to be doing. We have a parent resource center online that has a gallery of national resources and local resources. The criteria is they have to be free and accessible to everyone, which is very important to us. We also have teen resources. We've just launched a teen blog so that teens can share their stories. It launched today with a story about a young woman at Costa sharing her story of bullying, and as we know, sometimes going through those social, emotional, traumatic moments can lead to the alcohol and drug use. And we have a parent blog which has been going very strong, and I wanted to thank Cindy Strand for sharing a 3-part series in our parent blog. Cindy is also one of our ambassadors of the program and has been speaking for some of our education events and will continue to do so. And her story was just so powerful, and it's been read by hundreds of parents. We've had over 6,000 parents since the launch visit this website. That's unique visitors who've come to try to get these resources. And the parent blog is the most important and the last thing, or the most popular, I'll say. And our next issue of the e-newsletter, the theme is going to be around connecting, and we're going to be publishing a number of blogs from parents who are sharing their stories. And we'll be having a summary of tonight's event that will feature Karl McMillen, and we will also be featuring his book, which will be available here for the next month for parents to come in and pick up. This is our bookshelf because we've partnered with the Pages Bookstore, and our hope is to really make an impact with parents at a really young age. And let's hit this from a prevention perspective, and what you all do in treatment is, of course, incredibly important, and we hope that this can also be a resource for you as you're helping parents. And just know it's free. All you have to do is share the link, or you can search alcohol or drug prevention South Bay, and it's the #1 thing that will come up on Google because we have so much content on there. It usually comes up in the top 3 areas. And lastly, please share your own story if you have one. We'd love to publish it on the parent blog anonymously, or it could be a perspective that you've had in treating other people, and just to let people know everyone has a story. We're not alone, and to be able to connect and feel comfortable just reaching out and saying, hey, things are going a little wonky right now, I need some help, and not to be afraid to do that. And that is a big part of our mission. And I cannot thank Karl McMillen enough for, with his book, really being the shining example of sharing such a hard story so beautifully and in such a lasting way with our community. And thank you so much for being here tonight.